He walked onto the stage, nervous and unsure. But the moment he sang, Simon Cowell couldn't speak. The audience gasped, jaws dropped, and every note left everyone in shock. This teen's voice isn't just good, it's better than Elvis. You have to hear it to believe it. The lights dimmed in the studio, leaving only the spotlight to cut through the darkness. The audience's chatter softened, replaced by a tense, anticipatory silence. Camera crews swiveled, capturing every angle of the stage as it glimmered under the faint glow. The judges' panel was ready, their expressions carefully composed, yet beneath their calm exteriors, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism lingered. Simon Cowell sat back, his arms folded, eyes narrowing slightly, already bracing for what he assumed would be another ordinary audition. The air felt heavy, charged with expectation, but no one, not even the judges, could predict what was about to unfold. From the wings of the stage, a young Filipino boy appeared. He moved slowly, almost cautiously, his steps measured, his eyes scanning the audience and then flicking nervously toward the judges. He clutched the microphone in his hands as though it were a lifeline, and for a moment he paused, taking a deep, steadying breath. The audience leaned forward instinctively, sensing something fragile, something extraordinary, in this quiet, unassuming figure. Whispers rippled through the crowd. He looks so small. Can he really do this? Does he know what he's up against? I hope he's ready. Each question was punctuated by the soft rustle of programs and the occasional clearing of throats. Every pair of eyes in the room was locked on him, yet none of them knew what to expect. The boy shifted slightly, adjusting the microphone stand with careful precision. He glanced up at Simon Cowell, whose gaze was piercing, analytical, and unyielding. The subtle arch of Simon's brow seemed almost to weigh on him, a silent judgment. Across the panel, other judges exchanged quiet glances. Some looked mildly curious, others amused, but all were waiting for the moment when the boy's voice would either rise to the occasion or falter under the weight of expectation. It was a moment that would define him, a moment where nerves and talent collided, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. He closed his eyes briefly, inhaling deeply, the air around him thick with anticipation. In that pause, time seemed to slow. The audience's murmurs faded into nothing, as if the theater itself was holding its breath. You could almost hear the collective heartbeat of everyone present, quickened and synchronized, all waiting for the first note. The young singer's hands tightened around the microphone. His fingers trembled slightly, betraying the anxiety that threatened to shake his otherwise composed demeanor. Yet behind that nervousness there was a flicker of determination, a spark of something undeniable. He knew that this moment was bigger than him, bigger than the nerves, bigger than any doubt. He opened his eyes and looked at the judges again. Simon Cowell leaned slightly forward, one hand resting against his chin, eyes sharp and unyielding. "Let's hear it," Simon said simply, his voice calm but carrying the weight of experience and unspoken expectation. The other judges nodded subtly, their expressions composed but alert. The audience seemed to hold their collective breath, waiting for the magic that might, or might not, emerge. The boy nodded faintly, swallowing hard, and lifted the microphone to his lips. There was a tiny shake in his hands, barely perceptible, but it was enough to make the audience lean closer, their anticipation growing. He began to hum softly, testing the pitch, a tentative sound that barely filled the room. It was cautious, almost hesitant, yet there was an undercurrent of control, a subtle promise of the power hidden within his voice. The judge's eyebrows lifted slightly, sensing potential even in those first few quiet moments. Simon's expression shifted imperceptibly, a flicker of interest passing across his face. The audience leaned in as the hum transformed into the first note, a sound so pure and controlled that it seemed to hang in the air, arresting everyone's attention. Heads turned, eyes widened, and whispers ceased. Something extraordinary was beginning to take shape. As the first few lines of the song left his lips, the audience felt it. The unexpected richness, the clarity, the power that seemed almost impossible for someone so young and seemingly fragile. The notes carried effortlessly, precise and controlled, yet infused with emotion that belied his age. Each phrase seemed carefully measured, each breath perfectly timed. The boy's eyes remained focused, not on the audience or the judges, but on the music itself, as if he were channeling something deep within. The air was thick with tension, excitement, and disbelief, all blending into a palpable energy that swept across the room. Simon Cowell shifted in his seat, one eyebrow slightly raised, his skeptical exterior giving way to genuine curiosity. The other judges leaned forward subtly, exchanging glances, their composure beginning to crack. The audience, initially hesitant and unsure, was now captivated. Every person present could feel the moment's gravity, the rare sensation of witnessing talent that transcended expectation. The boy's performance, though only beginning, was already commanding attention, bending disbelief into awe. The silence that followed each note was not emptiness but a reverent pause, a shared acknowledgement that something extraordinary was happening before their eyes. The young singer took another breath, steadying himself as he prepared to continue. His posture straightened, his focus sharpened, and a quiet confidence began to emerge. Gone were the initial traces of nervousness. In their place was the undeniable presence of a performer ready to own the stage. The audience instinctively leaned forward, drawn in by the magnetism of his voice and the intensity of his delivery. Every person in the theater was now a witness to the transformation of a seemingly ordinary boy into a force that could command attention, challenge expectations, and leave an indelible mark on everyone who heard him. Even the camera operators couldn't look away, capturing every subtle movement, every slight shift in expression, every fleeting moment of anticipation. Simon Cowell's gaze was fixed, unwavering, as he processed the unexpected depth and maturity of the voice before him. The other judges began to exchange subtle nods, acknowledging the sheer skill and potential they were witnessing. The room was electric, alive with the thrill of discovery, the excitement of watching history in the making. The boy's hands, once trembling, now gripped the microphone with control, as if he had found the anchor he needed. His eyes glimmered with a mix of determination, focus, and the faintest hint of pride, though he remained humble, letting the performance speak for itself. Every breath, every note, every slight movement contributed to the growing tension and anticipation. The audience, the judges, and even the crew behind the cameras, all were caught in the spell of a moment that promised to be unforgettable. And in that quiet, fragile instant before the first fully powerful note, the boy's presence on stage spoke louder than words. He was ready. He was about to shock everyone, even Simon Cowell himself. The energy in the room was tangible, crackling, almost impossible to ignore. Everyone knew deep down that this was no ordinary audition. Something extraordinary was about to happen, and nothing could prepare them for the force of the voice that was about to fill the room. The first note hung in the air like a spark before a wildfire. The young Filipino singer's voice flowed effortlessly, rich and powerful, filling the room with a resonance that was both surprising and mesmerizing. It wasn't just the clarity of the sound that shocked everyone. It was the emotion, the way each note seemed to tell a story, pulling the audience into a world they had never expected. People leaned forward instinctively, their eyes wide, their mouths slightly open, unable to look away. The initial murmurs of skepticism had vanished, replaced by awe and disbelief. Simon Cowell's expression had shifted from mild curiosity to genuine astonishment. His jaw, almost impossibly, remained slack as he tried to process the voice that defied every expectation. He had seen countless performers, many talented, some exceptional, yet this was something entirely different. There was a depth, a resonance, a control in the young singer's voice that made even the most seasoned professional stop in their tracks. The camera captured the slow, deliberate tilt of Simon's head, the narrowing of his eyes, the subtle lean forward that betrayed the disbelief he could no longer hide. As the performance continued, the audience became completely silent, hanging on every syllable. The high notes soared effortlessly, pure and unwavering, echoing across the theater. There was a richness to the tone, a warmth that wrapped around the listener, making it impossible not to feel something profound. Even the other judges, who had initially been composed and professional, could not help themselves. Their eyes widened, some exchanging quick glances, their expressions a mixture of amazement and disbelief. One whispered to another, This can't be real." The singer's body moved subtly with the music, each movement purposeful yet understated. He wasn't performing for attention or theatrics. He was performing because he was lost in the music, completely immersed, letting every note and every word pour from his heart. The microphone, once gripped nervously, now rested with a natural confidence in his hands, as though it had become an extension of his voice itself. Every phrase was precise, every pause perfectly timed, creating a flow that seemed both effortless and meticulously controlled. The camera panned over the audience, capturing faces frozen in astonishment. Some had hands clasped to their mouths, others had wide eyes that reflected pure disbelief. A few people instinctively stood, clapping mid-performance, unable to contain their admiration. The atmosphere was electric, every corner of the room vibrating with the sheer intensity of the moment. The silence between notes was not emptiness but a shared recognition. Something extraordinary was happening right in front of them, and they were lucky enough to witness it. Simon Cowell leaned back slightly, his fingers pressed against his lips as he tried to process the magnitude of what he was hearing. This was not just talent, it was mastery. The kind of voice that could make history. The kind of performance that would be remembered long after the lights dimmed. His eyes darted from the young singer to the other judges and back, as if searching for confirmation that this wasn't some illusion. The disbelief was palpable, the admiration undeniable. The singer hit another series of high notes, each one ringing clear and true, resonating in the chest of everyone present. The control, the power, the emotion, it all combined into a singular experience that left the audience breathless. Some people held their hands to their hearts, overwhelmed by the unexpected intensity. Others whispered in disbelief, trying to find words that could match what they were witnessing, but none existed. The notes carried weight, meaning, and emotion that transcended the song itself, turning a familiar melody into an unforgettable experience. As he moved into the chorus, the boy's confidence grew. There was no trace of hesitation or doubt anymore. It was as if he had merged with the music entirely. His eyes shone with determination and focus, yet there was a humility in his posture, a subtle grace that made the performance feel authentic and pure. The audience responded instinctively, swaying, leaning forward, letting the music envelop them. Even the camera crew was caught in the spell, capturing every stunned expression, every wide-eyed reaction. Simon Cowell's reaction became the focal point for the audience. He was visibly struggling to contain his astonishment, the slow blink, the slack jaw, the involuntary nod of approval. Everything spoke louder than words. The voice, which seemed impossible for someone of this age and size, had completely rewired the expectations in the room. Every note challenged disbelief. Every high pitch surpassed expectation, and the emotion behind each phrase made even the most critical listeners falter. The singer's technique was flawless, yet there was a raw, organic quality to it that made it human, relatable, and deeply moving. He wasn't just performing Elvis, he was redefining the song, infusing it with life, passion, and power that made listeners forget the original, leaving only awe and wonder. Every vibrato, every crescendo, every subtle inflection contributed to an overwhelming sense of magic. It wasn't just a performance, it was a revelation. By the final verse, the room was utterly captivated. The audience, the judges, even the crew behind the cameras, all were holding their collective breath. The boy's control over the notes was astonishing, his emotion tangible, and his presence commanding. Every eye followed him, every ear strained to capture the perfection. Every heart seemed synchronized with the rhythm of his voice. And then came the final notes, high, sustained, impossibly perfect. The last syllable lingered in the air, vibrating through the theater, leaving silence in its wake. The silence was electric, filled with awe, disbelief, and unspoken admiration. No one moved, no one spoke. And then slowly, like a dam breaking, applause erupted. The audience leapt to their feet, clapping and cheering, some even wiping away tears. Simon Cowell stood, still visibly stunned, clapping slowly, almost in disbelief that what he had just witnessed was real. The other judges were equally astonished, nodding, smiling, whispering to each other in admiration. The young singer smiled humbly, overwhelmed but composed, letting the ovation wash over him. In those moments after the performance, it was clear this was no ordinary audition. This was a transformative moment, a performance that had not only captivated the audience but had also rewritten the expectations of what a young performer could achieve. Every reaction, every cheer, every astonished look in the room was a testament to the extraordinary talent that had just been revealed. The teen had not just performed a song, he had left an indelible mark on everyone present, proving that sometimes the most unexpected performers can create the most unforgettable moments. The final note lingered in the air, vibrating softly as if reluctant to leave theater. For a heartbeat, the room was suspended in silence, the kind of silence that follows something monumental, when everyone collectively realizes they have witnessed something extraordinary. Time seemed to pause. The audience's initial shock had transformed into awe, their minds racing to process what they had just heard. The young Filipino singer, standing at the center of the stage, lowered the microphone slowly, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths. His eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the faces of people who were no longer just spectators. They were witnesses to a moment that would be remembered long after the lights dimmed. Simon Cowell was the first to break the spell, though not entirely. Slowly, deliberately, he rose from his chair. His expression was a mixture of disbelief and genuine admiration. The slight shake of his head, the widening of his eyes, and the half-smile forming on his lips conveyed what words could not. He clapped, but it was slow, measured, an acknowledgement of the magnitude of what he had just witnessed. I have no words," he said finally, his voice low, almost reverent. "That was unbelievable." The other judges were quick to follow, their faces reflecting the same mix of astonishment and elation. Some were still shaking their heads, as if trying to comprehend how someone so young could produce a voice so powerful, so precise, and so full of emotion. The audience erupted next, a tidal wave of sound, energy, and emotion. People stood, cheering, clapping, and some even whistled in disbelief. Hands were raised, phones were lifted to capture the moment, and tears glistened in the eyes of those who had been touched by the performance. The energy in the room was palpable, almost electric, as if the walls themselves were reverberating with the sheer force of the applause. Every corner of the theater seemed alive, charged the collective recognition of having witnessed something historic. The young singer stood humbly at the center of the stage, a small, almost shy smile crossing his face. He raised a hand in gratitude, acknowledging the overwhelming reaction without a word. His chest swelled with pride, yet he remained grounded, aware that this moment was not about ego but about sharing something beautiful with the world. He had faced doubt, nervousness, and the impossible expectations of millions of eyes, and yet he had conquered them all, not with arrogance, but with pure talent and authenticity. The camera captured every detail, Simon Cowell slowly walking closer to the stage, still clapping, his jaw slightly dropped, a rare and genuine expression of amazement, the other judges smiling, some leaning toward each other to whisper, "Did you hear that? That was insane." The audience on their feet, clapping in unison, some jumping in excitement, others wiping away tears of joy and amazement. It was a symphony of reactions, each person processing the moment in their own way, yet all united by the same overwhelming sense of awe. The young singer began to step back slightly, allowing the applause to wash over him. The microphone was lowered gently, and for a moment he simply stood there, breathing, absorbing the magnitude of the reaction. Simon Cowell's voice broke the moment again. "You have changed what it means to perform this song. I've never heard anything like that in my life." He paused, looking at the other judges, who nodded in agreement. That was perfection. Pure perfection. The words, though few, carried the weight of decades of experience and a lifetime of witnessing exceptional talent. It was one of the highest compliments a performer could receive, especially from someone known for being notoriously critical. The audience continued to cheer, the clapping seemingly endless. Some fans were shouting the singer's name, while others were exclaiming their disbelief. "That was better than Elvis. How is he even real? I've never heard anything like that." The room was filled with energy, excitement, and inspiration, each reaction a testament to the young singer's extraordinary ability to captivate hearts instantly. Every note had left an impression, every phrase had connected deeply, and now the final applause was a collective acknowledgement of an unforgettable performance. The judges gathered their composure slowly, each reflecting on what they had just witnessed. One judge, usually reserved and analytical, whispered to another, "I didn't think anyone could ever top that." And yet, here he is. The humility, control, and sheer brilliance of the performance had silenced skepticism entirely. Even the seasoned producers and crew members behind the cameras were visibly impressed, shaking their heads in disbelief and exchanging looks that said everything words could not. The young singer finally stepped forward, bowing slightly to the audience and the judges alike. The applause did not fade, it swelled even more, like a living entity, acknowledging not just the performance, but the courage, the determination, and the heart that had brought him to that stage. He raised his hand one last time in a gesture of gratitude, his eyes glistening, lips trembling ever so slightly from emotion. Every individual in the theater felt the weight of the moment, a performance that transcended talent and reached something deeper, something unforgettable. Simon Cowell, still clapping, leaned slightly toward the microphone. "I don't say this lightly. That was historic. I've been in this business a long time, and I can honestly say, that voice, that talent, that performance, it's the kind of thing you don't forget, ever." His words hung in the air, confirming what the audience already knew. They had just witnessed greatness. The other judges nodded vigorously, some smiling, some in awe, all united in acknowledgement of a rare and extraordinary talent. As the applause slowly began to taper, the young singer stepped back, his performance complete but its impact lingering in every corner of the room. Faces glowed with excitement, hands were still clapping, and the energy of the audience remained electric, unwilling to let go of the magic they had just witnessed. It was a standing ovation that seemed to last forever, a collective celebration of talent, courage, and the unexpected. The boy, now at the center of this whirlwind of admiration, had transformed from a nervous contestant into a figure of inspiration, proving that true talent has the power to transcend doubt, fear, and even disbelief itself. And in that moment, everyone, audience, judges, and crew alike, knew they had been a part of something unforgettable, something rare, something legendary. The standing ovation was not just for the performance, it was for the courage, the heart, and the undeniable brilliance that had taken the stage and left an indelible mark on every single person present. The teen's smile, humble yet radiant, captured the essence of the moment, a mixture of triumph, gratitude, and the quiet acknowledgement that he had given the world a performance it would never forget.